This episode of Wheat Pete's Word is brought to you by Miravis Neo from Syngenta. You can trust Miravis Neo to protect your corn against diseases like gibberella ear rot and tar spot. Miravis Neo is the only corn fungicide solution that delivers yield and quality all in one jug. Visit syngenta.ca for more info.
Good day, and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, June the 19th. On this episode of the Word, progress. Yes, finally, progress. We are in the field in the wet areas. Hey, harvest. We're progress in the field planting, and we have harvest underway. After that, agronomy answers. Lots of questions coming in, lots of things to be aware of, and make sure you make the right management decisions. Let's go! Yes, finally, the soil has dried out. We have some temperature. The rains, we've missed them. And so even Nature Nut Nick managing to finish planting Tuesday, June the 18th, late in the evening. Nature Nut Nick got done. That is awesome. It is really astounding to me how on the heavier clay soils, they rarely dry out really well until we get this week of hot weather. It's almost like they have to bake in the sun to get enough of that moisture to evaporate so that they work and work well and you can plant into good conditions. Regardless, across the area, tremendous headway being made. Many growers starting to finish up. Agricor, of course, did extend the deadline for planting corn. It's a little bit too unfortunate, I guess, that they didn't tell us they were going to extend that deadline till June the 18th until, I don't know when it was, on June the 14th or 15th. I was right at the deadline. I guess it was the 14th. Meanwhile, there were some growers who were replanting corn. So in the areas with too much moisture, growers, even on some better sandy loam soils, had so much rainfall that the corn didn't make it. They were having to replant corn. Some of that corn got replanted, maybe a little bit tougher conditions than you would have liked. And had we known the deadline was going to get extended a day or two earlier, we might not have replanted on the 14th of June. We might have done it on the 16th of June. But nonetheless, kudos to Agricor. They gave you lots of options out there. And now you have until June the 30th to finish those soybeans. Get those soybeans in the ground. Meanwhile, Pete from Watford saying, hey, Pete, we planted corn June the 14th, so at Watford, they dried out a little bit earlier. There was good conditions. They got that corn in the ground. And he's saying, you know, all this heat is so awesome. Well, awesome for corn, not awesome for wheat, but regardless, awesome. Can that corn be knee-high by the 1st of July? Okay, Pete, that's just a little bit of a pipe dream. Think about this. We max out about 30 crop heat units. With corn, we look at crop heat units more than we do growing degree days. Wheat and soybeans, it's growing degree days. But they're just measurements of heat and how that affects the physiological progress or the growth in the crop. We max out about 30 growing degree days, crop heat units in corn. And so it takes 150 crop heat units to get corn to emerge. So if you max out at 30, 5 days at 30, you're at 150. Corn can emerge in 5 days. Now that's pretty rare, but it is possible. Plant the 14th of June. It emerges the 19th of June. That gives us 11 days. No, sorry, we just can't get it to knee-high by the 1st of July. But nonetheless, if you have an awesome, even stand of corn, and typically when you get this kind of weather, the corn emerges more uniformly, and uniformity in a corn crop is massive. Even if it's not knee-high by the 1st of July, it has a great chance of being a super crop, particularly if you ratcheted back that maturity appropriately, which I'm pretty sure we've talked about enough, and everybody did. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, again, yesterday, Tuesday, June the 18th, we started winter barley harvest. So down in Kent County, we're at winter barley harvest. Now, interestingly enough, the yield is just kind of average. We're really looking for blow the doors off yields, but it's just average. And the grower a little bit kept saying, man, I thought I'd have more. Well, winter barley, or barley in general, like wheat hates wet feet. But barley despises wet feet. Like it just cannot tolerate wet feet. That part of the world had a ton of rainfall throughout all of May. It was always wet, wet, wet. I think that those wet feet really did hurt the winter barley crop in that part of the world just because it can't tolerate it. Really interesting on that note, Frederick from Belgium actually tweeting me saying, any ideas, Pete? Because in Belgium, the winter wheat, is turning yellow. The leaves are turning yellow and dying a month before they should. The wheat crop is not mature. What is going on? Now, in Belgium, they have had record rainfall all the way through. And it's a root issue. We're not exactly sure whether it's too shallow roots and then it's turned drier there. So the wheat roots, once you start grain fill, you don't grow as many roots. They couldn't chase the moisture down to keep the plant getting moisture, or exactly what's going on. But yeah, wet feet absolutely hurt wheat, and it hurts barley. And so where we have super wet saturated soils, it's still good. I mean, gosh, the barley yield was good, but wasn't the record that particular grower was hoping for. And we'll wait for some the drier soils. I'm still looking for some record yields, but don't be surprised if you're on heavy wet clay and it's not bin buster. It might just be that little bit of too much moisture that hurt us. Meanwhile, on the other side of the coin, oh my gosh, Gerard up in the bottom end of Bruce County on the sand soils at the south end of Bruce County, sending me a message saying, Pete, can you send us some rain? We are too dry now. We haven't had rain. We really desperately need rain. And you just go, oh my gosh, isn't that, it's just from one extreme to the other extreme. Hopefully you get a shower, Gerard, and keep things going. But yeah, on sand soils, they actually started irrigation as well on the sand soils in Norfolk, so we know that things are starting to dry out from that perspective. Yeah, and the heat. So we talked about the heat. I want to just mention quickly, because Tyler said, oh, Peter, my February planted oat crop, so gorgeous, the best looking oat crop we have ever seen in our lives, 61 seeds per head, and it's pollinating at 32 degrees Celsius. What is the yield impact? Tyler, I have no good news for you. Oats are more heat sensitive than either barley or wheat, and so this heat is absolutely going to blast some of those kernels. I don't know exactly how many. Probably you're looking at least a 10% yield hit. However, the upside is you've got lots of moisture. Lots of moisture means the oats can tolerate that stress a little bit better. But yeah, if you have spring cereals that are pollinating right now, this heat wave is not a good deal. That is for sure. Hey, a couple of other quick notes. I'm still getting calls and questions about armyworm in the wheat crop. Yes, they're out there. They are simply too late to do any damage. In Tyler's oat crop, man, go look for armyworm. In the spring cereals, they can do massive damage still. In winter wheat, we're just beyond that. They can be there. They aren't going to do you any damage. And Ellen Sperry from C&M Seeds also tweeting out that she found leaf rust. So not only stripe rust this year, but also leaf rust, which again can be a devastating disease, but it's come in too late, which is often what happens with stripe rust, but not this year, 2024. Stripe rust was early. Leaf rust this time of the year, yep, don't want to see it, but it's actually not going to do very much damage at all. Hey, Lindsay, we talked about the bird damage and that grower from Mount Forest. So Elvin from Mount Forest called me back and said, Peter, it absolutely was bird damage. And you could see the birds doing it. It was crows, and they would pull wait till that corn plant emerged and just reach down in and pull out the seed and eat the seed and have the plant laying there. They talked about this on the agronomists on Monday night as well. It seems to be across a wide geography. Elvin had a really great story, though. He said they started on his gravel knolls. He thinks because the corn was either a little shallower there or it was just easier to pull the kernel out. His neighbor planted corn a week later than he did, and after they got done with Elvern's corn, they moved to his neighbor's and did even more damage. And then another neighbor planted a week after that, and they moved there. So they also seem to pick on the areas of the field where the corn comes out of the ground the easiest. Those birds are smart. Nothing we can do about them, but yeah, they do cause a lot of injury when that happens. Melvin, right to the end, I couldn't believe it. So Melvin sent me a quick note saying, hey, Peter, just want you to know that it is June the 12th. This is last week's word, June the 12th, not January the 12th. I can't believe people actually listen right to the end of the word. And yeah, my brain goes south a little bit when I get to the end, maybe of a 20-minute podcast. So apologies for that. Once in a while, I do get it wrong. Okay, I got to move into the agronomy answers here. I'm taking way too long. So first up is on herbicides, and lots of questions about spraying in this heat. The answer is keep spraying. Small weeds are much easier to kill than big weeds, and the more heat these weeds get, the more they're going to harden off. But as much as possible, you need to spray on the shoulders of the day, and you also need to spray when there's not an inversion, particularly if you are having fine droplets, trying to get coverage. Then those fine droplets, not just with dicamba, with any herbicides, in an inversion, they can move. So there's lots of spray tools out there, but the Ingenious spray tool is really a good website to go to say, is today a spray day or not? I encourage you to use that resource. Thanks to BASF for doing that. But again, spray as quickly as you can, but on the shoulders of the day, because in the very heat of the day, when temperatures go really hot, over 30, 32 degrees, then a lot of the weeds stop metabolizing. It's just too hot for them. If you spray in the heat of the day, the product can't work because it has to affect the metabolism of the weed. So in the heat of the day, lots of times we would try to stay away from that if we can. If you have too many acres to do, you have to keep going. But with the contact herbicides, things like Reflex, Blazer, Bazagran on the IP soybeans, you'll get a lot of phytotoxicity spraying in the heat of the day. Try to use the evenings to spray those products. The mornings if you have to, but evenings are best in terms of not having more phytotoxicity, more burn on the crop. Make sure you keep the surfactants in. If you start pulling the surfactants out, you just won't get weed control. On the other hand, with systemic herbicides like glyphosate or the group 4 herbicides that move in the plant, the 2,4-Ds, and although it's really pretty hot for any of the group 4s, but there you would try to spray in the morning if possible so that the plant could recover overnight and be metabolizing in the morning, so it would metabolize those herbicides and actually kill the weeds that we're trying to kill from that perspective. And on that note, wild carrot. Oh my gosh, there's huge wild carrot in so many fields. It seems to be the weed of the year right now. If you're going to go after wild carrot, for goodness sakes, and you're in a glyphosate-tolerant crop, a Roundup-ready crop, you must increase the rate of glyphosate. If you go to the Crop Protection Hub, it's really interesting. Go to the Crop Protection Hub and look up wild carrot control in either glyphosate-tolerant soybeans or glyphosate-tolerant corn. A 2x rate of glyphosate gives you 85% control. A 1x rate of glyphosate gives you 35% control. So a massive rate response in terms of trying to get control on these big wild carrot plants. Some questions coming in as well about, how high a rate of glyphosate can I actually go to? And the new genetics can take quite a high rate. In fact, some of the labels change to go up to 1.75 liters of a 540 glyphosate. Read the label. I'm not saying to go that high, but you're after wild carrot. You can split apply. You can do 1 liter twice. That's as good as 2 liters once, but it does mean 2 trips through the field. The other thing, if you're in IP soybeans, of course, you cannot use glyphosate, so Classic would be the product of choice there. And in corn, you can actually add Peak to the glyphosate, or if you're in non-GMO corn, Peak would be the product. So those wild carrot, a big issue, but some control tips just to make sure we do the best job possible. And if the wild carrot is in flower, I'm not sure any rate is actually going to kill it. You can hopefully stop it from going to seed, but it's just very, very tough. Okay, next, I got to talk about side dressing corn and an awesome study, which we will link in the post, in the Pioneer highlights. It's Josh Naselski data primarily. There's a couple of sites in the U.S. as well. But the bottom line out of this, if you're side dressing corn, and lots of growers have gone to top dressing corn with urea. It's faster. It's easier than 28%. We got a lot of acres to cover. Let's just do it as fast and efficiently as we can. In that study, urea top dressed on corn that was not stabilized on average. So this is the average number. This is not the top end number. On average, lost 40 pounds per acre of a 130-pound application. So you just go like, wow, that's massive. You just cannot afford to lose that much. If it was stabilized urea, the average number was 14 pounds per acre. So if you're top dressing with urea, first off, try to get it on earlier, because when you stabilize that urea, that means it doesn't become available for the corn crop as quickly. It takes some time, 2 weeks for the stabilizer to allow that to transform to ammonium and then to nitrate. The corn plant doesn't take the urea up, so get it done early, but you're going to top dress. You absolutely need to stabilize that. If you move to 28%, really interesting, the science would say that 28% should be 50% as much loss as the urea. In this study, you would expect surface applied 28% to lose 20 pounds. If urea loses 40, it should lose 20. It didn't. It lost only 10 pounds per acre on average. There was sometimes, if you're putting 28% on a damp soil surface, you can lose a lot more, but on average, it was 1/4 of the loss, 10 pounds per acre. If it was stabilized and put right on the surface, banded on the surface, it lost 7 pounds per acre. And if it was injected, it lost only 3 pounds per acre. So take some time to inject, but it does save some nitrogen. Really interesting, though, not nearly the impetus to stabilize 28% as there is that urea. Environmentally, you should still stabilize. There's no question about that. But from a loss perspective, just some really great data. Kudos to Josh Naselski for doing that. And have a look at the link, or at the paper in the link, because it does just give a lot of information. Hey, one other thing I will mention. It took 3 inches of rain, 76 millimeters, to get that nitrogen top dressed in corn, whether it was 28% of urea, deep enough in the soil profile that we didn't continue to get some loss. We've always talked about 1/2 inch of rainfall being enough. In a growing corn crop, pulling so much moisture, they needed up to 3 inches of rain to get that job done. Wow, that is a lot of rainfall. Okay, I want to carry on. Ben asking, okay, this corn, Peter, like the soil has just gone rock hard. Do we scuffle? And the answer is, yeah, Ben, you can scuffle. You can open it up. Does it help? Some old data that Johnson did with Lambton County Soil and Crop way long time ago on heavy clay soil, if we opened that up after it got really compacted, we could gain up to 10 bushels per acre. On loam soils, you won't gain as much. Ben did ask, what about weed control? Well, you will break the seal, so to speak, but if your herbicide has been on 3 weeks, probably the amount of residual you're getting out of that herbicide now is pretty small. And so it becomes a time factor. It's not a massive gain, but there is something there, scuffling corn, if the soil has gone really, really hard. But if you're on a silt loam soil, I think that gain is pretty doggone small. One last thing I need to cover is double crop soybeans. I mean, gosh, if we are at winter barley harvest as of today, we are going to be at, we need to talk about double crop soybeans. We did an awesome series with Eric Richter back in 2016 on the soybean school about double crop soybeans, and we'll link it in the post. There's 3 different interviews, I think, there, but here's the bottom line. As of July the 1st, up until July the 1st, stay the course with maturity. So if you're generally a group 2, then you stay at a group 2 until July the 1st, and if you get winter barley off on the 18th of June, you can double crop full season soybeans, and it should work. He's the guru. His suggestion is that as of July the 1st, so once we hit July the 1st, every day you lose 1 bushel per acre per day in soybean yield. That's huge. But July the 1st, you drop 3/4 of a maturity group. So if you are at a 2.0, you would go to a 1.25. If you're at a 1, you would go to a 0.25 or a 0.3 maturity group soybean. And then you drop 1/4 of a group every 5 days until July the 15th. After July the 15th, it gets pretty sketchy. Some growers can double crop soybeans later than that, but for most of us in Ontario, certainly once you go north of London, beyond the 15th of July gets very sketchy. But by the time you get to that 15th of July, you would be 1.5 maturity groups less than you would normally do with a full season soybean. Cool. And with that, I mean, once again, way over time. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, June the 19th. Keep the questions coming, the comments coming. Get the crop in the ground and then get it off. And I don't know, do whatever you need to do. We'll talk to you next week. Bye now.
Thank you for downloading this episode of Wheat Pete's Word, brought to you by Miravis Neo from Syngenta. You can trust Miravis Neo to protect your corn against diseases like gibberella ear rot and tar spot. Miravis Neo is the only corn fungicide solution that delivers yield and quality all in one jug. Visit syngenta.ca for more info.